Hey Omnibuds, come with me on a shelf tour. I've been wanting to do this video for a long time, but my shelf is kind of messy. It needs to be reorganized, but I just never dedicate the time to do that. So I figured I'll just show it to you, and maybe that'll kind of influence me to organize and change it. But I'm really excited to show you what I've got. Grab your cup of coffee, and let's check out these books. So just kind of a quick look at the shelf and kind of how I'll do this. I don't have a Kallax, I've got some built-ins, but I'll kind of go like section by section and show you everything. Maybe take a look at the toys up top. So just to get it out of the way, up top I've kind of got this unfinished kind of cubby area. I've got some new books, the Moon Knight books, which I haven't put away yet. This is my for sale stack. Back here is a book stand that kind of holds the book open, so it's not like a full 180 degrees. I really like that. Star Wars posters. I don't know where I got those, the chrome art collectibles. I feel like I got them at Best Buy back in the day. The current book I'm reading is usually parked right here. I've got some not statues, they're more toys. These are the what are they? The McFarlane 1/10 scale or 1/6 scale. Most of them, and then that Iron Man is like a die cast something or other. In the back there, I've got just some Marvel book. I don't. It's like a character. I think that was like a Borders Books special or something. This is just a stack of random stuff. And then in the back there, I've got, which I can't get to because my ring light power cord is not long enough. But in the back, I've got some CGC books. Now, I am not a CGC collector at all, but it's Wolverine the Limited Series #1, and then Wolverine his actual monthly series #1. I got one of them as a gift. I think the 7.5 I got as a gift from someone, and then I was at a store and I saw Wolverine #1, and I thought they would just look cool with each other. So decided to pick it up. I'm not a big CGC guy. I don't anticipate buying more, but you never know. But that is the disgusting top shelf that needs to be cleaned. Let's go on to section 1. So you probably can't tell now, or maybe you can. I organize my shelf different than a lot of people organize their shelf. I like my books in chronological order of kind of how the events happened. Now, it's not always easy, and you'll see that later on. Like as we get into the modern age, and there's crossovers, and you got to stop and read this book, and then stop, go back to this book. But early on, it's pretty easy. And my early stuff is largely X-Men. But we start with this book back here, Wolverine Origin. This is the Jenkins and Kubert book that they did back in, man, it was the early 2000s. And then they came and followed it up with a kind of a follow-up story. But both of those are in the collected in this oversized hardcover. And I start there because, like, chronologically, that would be probably the first thing written in the Marvel Universe that I care about. Next up is Weapon X, which I don't know. Let me know in the comments. Is there an oversized hardcover of this book? I don't believe there is, but I put it there because that kind of stuff would happen before he is introduced into the X-Men. I know it's collected in, I think, Wolverine's solo omnibus volume 1, but I don't own that. So then we get into Uncanny X-Men. Again, this is most of my early, like, mid 70s into the 80s stuff is Uncanny X-Men. I do have the Moon Knight books, which I have not placed in their official spot yet. There's some more 80s stuff I want to get. I want to get the Frank Miller stuff, Daredevil stuff. Don't have that yet, but that would all go kind of in this section. But yeah, we go Uncanny X-Men 1, 2, 3, 4. Amazing stuff. I love every single one of these books. I don't know if I could pick out, probably 1, 2, and 3 would be my favorites. But somewhere in the middle of Uncanny X-Men 4 is when you would go and read Secret Wars, the original one. This is still wrapped. I've read this story numerous times, but I upgraded from trade paperback to the omnibus when that was reprinted, so that's why it's still wrapped. Then we get into, oh man, there's a whole story about this one. So everyone probably remembers Uncanny X-Men 5. Omar announced that, and it was a hot day. A lot of feelings that day about the way they chose to map it. I was one of those that had some feelings. They just excluded the X Factor stuff, showing Jean Grey's ridiculous return. But I bought it, and then when they announced this behemoth, I got this. But I have not cracked this one open yet. I've read most of the contents of that book already. From there, from Mutant Massacre Prelude, we go into Mutant Massacre, which is, I think, my all-time favorite. It's not really an event; it's more of a crossover X-Men. I love Mutant Massacre. This is when the 80s, when things are getting, the tone of comics is changing, and I just absolutely love that book. Then we go to Fall of Mutants, Inferno Prologue, Inferno, which I will say the exact opposite of. It's still a great story, and a lot of like really important character things happen in that story, but it's my least favorite X-Men book. And then right down here, I've got a little temperature. Here's what kind of nerd I am. I've got a temperature gauge and a humidity gauge thing. So and then after X-Men Inferno, we get into X-Men Claremont Lee Volume 1. Then finally, we got Extinction Agenda Omnibus. And then X-Men Claremont 2, which kind of has a little overlap with a book I'll show you in the next shelf. But let's move on to the next one. All right, we're into cubby number 2. Now, I will say, like, as we get here, you'll kind of see more of that chronological reading order, and it's not always perfect, so don't destroy me in the comments, or do. I love reading your comments. But we ended on Claremont Lee Volume 2, and then they don't necessarily interact with each other. But here's around the time where you'd read Infinity Gauntlet, which to me is one of the best events Marvel's ever done. I love this book. The Surfer issues leading up to the Infinity Gauntlet are gorgeous. Love that book. We recently got Blue and Gold Mutant Genesis. Really excited that this came out. This has got the Bishop's Crossing stuff, the extension, what was it? Executioner song stuff, and then some of those missing issues that we don't have. And then Fatal Attractions. So real quick, because it's not a review, Fatal Attractions is my favorite post Claremont pre would that be pre-Grant Morrison book. In fact, in my personal opinion, after Fatal Attractions, the book takes a bit of a nosedive. I'm a big X-Men guy, but I am not a completionist at all. You'll notice that there's no Onslaught in here. I sold that book. It's a slog to get through. I just don't love that era. You also notice I don't own all the Wolverine books. He's one of my favorite characters. I just haven't put the time into acquiring those books and getting them on my shelf, but I did. I had to get Volume 5. Volume 5 has some pretty big nostalgia for me. This is when I was originally buying comics. There's the cover of 100. This was a foil cover back in the day. Kubert's art is perfect. I loved Larry Hama, so I'll probably end up getting Wolverine's Volume 1 through 4 eventually. But then, timeline-wise, again, these aren't crossovers or anything. That's a natural stopping point for Wolverine and X-Men to me. And then we go and read Bendis's Daredevil, which is phenomenal. I love it. And then Grant Morrison's New X-Men. So there's a pretty big jump from Fatal Attractions to New X-Men. In between there, I don't love that stuff, and I don't think it's terribly necessary. But Grant Morrison's X-Men, which I reviewed a few months ago, man, I love that book. Wolverine by Greg Rucka, another one that I reviewed recently. This one is the relaunch of Wolverine. I remember when they relaunched it, and I was kind of worried about, like, oh my God, why did they cancel Wolverine or what happened? This is amazing stuff. So this will probably end up there's a Wolverine Volume 6, which is another slog probably to get through. That content's not my favorite. But then they didn't announce Volume 7. They announced Wolverine something or other, but it's essentially Volume 7. What will essentially be Volume 8 will most likely have this Greg Rucka stuff in it, and this stuff, the last 20 or so issues that closed out that first Wolverine run. And I'm really excited about that. I'll buy that day one. Then we get into Spider-Man by J. Michael Straczynski. I love this stuff. You'll notice I don't have book 2 right next to it. Book 2's in the next cubby. And that's because reading order. And, my kind of the reading order in my head. You want to go from here, read this stuff, understand where Spider-Man's at. Then we get into the disassembled and New Avengers age. And I love this era. Love, love, love. This is just the dust jacket. It's holding the place of the book, which is up here because I'm currently reading it. I'm going to do a whole video on what happens in between Disassembled and New Avengers, because I think New Avengers comes out the month after the finale of Avengers, but it's implied that there's about 6 months time gap, and in that time gap, some significant things happen. So I got Wolverine Enemy of the State by Mark Millar. I got the OHC because I don't need that full omnibus. Same thing with Secret War. This is the OHC. I know the omnibus just came out, but I don't really care about the Pulse stuff. And then Captain America by Ed Brubaker, which I just reviewed. I love this era of Captain America. This whole era, this 2000. I don't know, 1 to 4 era. A lot of things were changing. Quesada was coming in and doing a lot of stuff. So let's check out cubby number 3, I guess. All right, here's where things are going to get a bit messy with kind of jumping in between books, but you'll want to read J. Michael Straczynski's Spider-Man number 2. I'm going to reread that content and review it here soon, and I've got a take that not a lot of people have. I love that book. House of M, another book, and you'll probably start to see a track record here. I generally prefer the OHCs versus the omnibus with all the tie-ins. It's not always available, and you'll see that later. But when House of M came out, I think I bought the omnibus and then I traded someone, straight up for the OHC because I don't need all that stuff. And then I've got Decimation Day After, which I know the Decimation got an omnibus, but like outside of the Day After, I don't really care about that stuff. And then Brubaker's Deadly Genesis, which I absolutely love, and we need a Brubaker omnibus of X-Men. That's probably my top 5 most wanted. Planet Hulk, another one where I chose OHC over the omnibus. The follow-up to Bendis's Daredevil is Brubaker. I have not read this stuff yet, but I'm really excited because Brubaker is one of my favorite writers. Then we get into the Civil War era, which is going to be impossible. This book is so old. There's a few OHCs. There was a thinner one, and then there's this one, and this one has some really cool bonus content. I don't remember what it all is, but you've got to read Road to Civil War. I've got a few of the tie-ins, and this omnibus will be impossible. It'll most likely be the event with the lead up and maybe some Avengers stuff, and then 2, maybe 3 companion omnibuses. It's going to be a mess, but I know everyone's hungry for it. And then World War Hulk happens around here, and then again, the OHC is way better than the omnibus. You don't need all that stuff. And then we get into Thor by Straczynski and Gillen. I love this. They handled the return of Thor so well. There's an issue in there where he goes toe to toe with Iron Man, who presumed him dead for a long time. I think like 3 years, and he's learning what Tony Stark did with the clone of Thor in Civil War, and it's a bone-chilling issue. But this one also has, I think the Siege event is in the back of here, so it's wrapped. I've read all this content, but I recently upgraded to the hardcover. This book here is interesting because if you don't have this, you've never heard of this, this is Avengers Prime by Bendis. If you read from Disassembled all the way through Civil War and Siege, all of a sudden Thor and Captain America and Iron Man are best friends again, and you're like, wait a second, they all hated each other for a significant amount of time. How did they reconcile? Well, that reconciliation kind of happens in here. They have a discussion, and things kind of get wrapped up in that book. This is kind of an important one if you're a Bendis fan. Then we get into Some more X-Men. Again, I love this era. So the Brubaker stuff. I think a lot of this is Brubaker, and then the Messiah Complex, which has multiple authors. We just got an omnibus announced for the Messiah trilogy. I'm skipping that, and I'm going to hold out for a Brubaker, Carey, Fraction, however they decide to do that. I just not in love with the way they chose to do it. So Fallout from Messiah Complex, really important. And I think these are back to back. And this is, so it's more Brubaker. Divided We Stand, and then Manifest Destiny. And this is kind of that time where they're like, let's check out California. Then we've got Secret Invasion Omnibus. So here's one where I actually did upgrade from the OHC to the Omnibus, because the Omnibus has the New Avengers and Avengers issues. And they don't really belong in the middle of the story like a lot of people would like mapped. They're better as a retrospective to Secret Invasion, as a kind of how did this all really happen. Then we've got Dark Avengers, which hopefully we get an omnibus of soon. Continuing this era of X-Men, that Messiah era, X-Force Cable, and then Necrosha. I think, are those backwards? I might have those backwards. Then we got Captain America Lives. Did we talk about Death? Oh, we didn't. Here's Death of Cap. The title kind of gives it away. And then Captain America's Return. And then we get into Utopia, which I absolutely love. And hopefully they would put Utopia in a Dark Avengers omnibus. We get into the Hickman Fantastic Four. I am not a Fantastic Four fan. I don't own a lot of Fantastic Four. But I'm a big Hickman guy. So I bought them, and I have not read them yet, but I will. And then we've got X-Men Second Coming and Second Coming Revelations. So I'm going to drop the camera low, and we'll check out the next cubby of Marvel. All right, so continuing my Marvel portion of the shelf. And there is a little DC, and there's a lot of independent stuff that we'll get to. But we've got Thor by Fraction. I have read some of this run, but it ends with Fear Itself, which I read and I really enjoyed. And then we've got X-Men Schism, which is kind of a direct prelude to Avengers vs. X-Men, which, again, I went the route of the OHC. I think I did the same thing that I did with House of M, where I actually bought the Omni when it came out, and then I just even traded someone for the OHC, because it's just a much better option. If you can save space on your shelf, that's fantastic, especially if you have limited space. And then kind of falling out from Avengers vs. X-Men is Bendis's run. And people really misremember it, or there's a lot of, I don't want to say hate, but I'm a big Bendis guy, and I loved what he did with New X-Men. I thought, yeah, you could make the argument that what Beast did in this book was kind of out of character, but like if you look at what the X-Men went through over the previous 5 years, like he had to throw up a Hail Mary. I really love this run. I'm really excited to read it again now that we've got it in an omnibus. I think the Uncanny has the Battle of the Atom stuff. Then we get into Jason Aaron's Thor run, which had God Bomb, God Butcher. I love this stuff. And then from there, and again, the reading order does not get like super like read this book, then read this book. I've got a spreadsheet that says, okay, read this, then you're going to hop over to this, and you'll come back and finish this. Then you got to go read Original Sin. And you don't have to do it that way. I'm just a freaking psycho. So, and then shortly after Original Sin, we get the Death of Wolverine. And my personal opinion is that the Death of was pretty blah, I thought. But the stuff leading up to it, the 3 months to die, 3 months to live, I forget what it's called. That stuff was really fun Wolverine stuff. And although the death, like the way they killed Wolverine, I thought was pretty average, but the reaction of his teammates was super heartfelt, and I love that. Then we'll go into Hickman Avengers Volume 2, and actually you'd probably read a little bit into this before you read this stuff. Like Original Sin happens maybe in the middle here, right before, what's it called? There's an event that kind of closes out the second half of his run. There's a time jump. I forget. Time Runs Out, I think it was called. And then Secret Wars, and here again, yeah, shut up, Kevin. We know. I went OHC instead of the omnibus because screw that noise. This thing has been through it. I got this used and it's dinged up. It doesn't really bother me. So post Secret Wars, I actually initially, when this was happening, I was like, okay, Secret Wars, they're going to reset the universe. I'm going to stop. I'm just going to end my collection there. I'll have a great, and I can fill out, the early 70s stuff up to Secret Wars, and that'll just be my stuff. But a lot of good stuff happened after Secret Wars, and they didn't really reset the universe. It was a soft reboot. So I decided to keep going. But Captain America by Spencer, I love this stuff. The Hydra cap, I absolutely loved Secret Empire. And then somewhere in the middle there, you're going to read Secret War 2, which was done by Bendis, and not the greatest story in the history. And also, I think Secret War, the movie, was coming out. That's probably why they did it. But I always kind of wondered, like, why did they give the original Civil War, I think I said Secret War, Civil War, to Mark Millar and not Bendis? Because Bendis was like the architect of everything back then. So is this kind of throwing a bone to Bendis, letting him tell his version of a story? But now we're going to get into a X-Men era that is pretty rough. And X-Men have had rough eras, but I think this is probably the roughest. And if they ever did an omnibus of this era, I don't know that I'd get it. In fact, I'm not entirely sure where the Guggenheim stuff would land. Probably right around here-ish, I think. But Death of X, I own this in trade paperback. That's the only way it's available, I think. That's a pretty important story, kind of closing out the Bendis arc that went on too long after he left. Inhumans vs. X-Men, also important. And then the astonishing stuff, Life of X and A Man Called X. This is how Charles Xavier returns after the events of Avengers vs. X-Men. Again, not the greatest stuff, but the semi-completionist in me feels somewhat important. Phoenix Resurrection, they bring her back again. My God, when are they going to stop doing this? I own it just because I feel I have to. I likely would never upgrade this content. And then Extermination, which I think kind of wraps up the X-Men from the past stuff. So we got Death of Wolverine. We get into the Return of Wolverine, and same story. Like how they brought him back was, I thought, man, just like the laziest way ever. But the lead up stuff was really cool, I thought. So let's move on down to the next cubby. All right, so then we're going to finish off Jason Aaron's run. This is, the Unworthy Thor is in here. Jane Foster Thor, I love that stuff. Ooh, I've got a hidden book back here. You'll also notice I'm not a freak about separating trade paperbacks and OHCs and Omnis because of how I like to have my stuff. So then we get into Captain America by Ta-Nehisi Coates, which I will probably upgrade that to the omnibus. They printed a lot of that for some reason, and a lot of people like it, but I think they just overprinted it because I've seen that going for like $40, but I've not read that yet. The only other Fantastic Four book I have, and the reason I have this is because this is the first time Sue and Reed come back to Earth, really, post Secret Wars. Then we've got another rough era for X-Men, but really it's kind of like Road to House of X, and man, this is tough stuff. But Uncanny Disassembled, and then Wolverine and Cyclops. So in this era, I'm not, spoiler alert, if you haven't read this stuff, it's old. But for some reason, before House and Powers of X, they decided, let's bring back everyone who's ever died. So like within the span of a year, Wolverine returns from death. Cyclops returns from death. Jean Grey returns again for some reason. And then Professor Xavier. And it's just a rough era. The post-Bendis, pre-Hickman stuff, it's tough reading. So I'll just leave it at that. House and Powers of X, and then X-Men by Hickman. For the life of me, I don't know why this wasn't all one omnibus. And then somewhere in here you read Empire. I've not read Empire yet. In fact, as we kind of close out the rest of the stuff, I haven't read a lot of this stuff. But I've heard pretty poor things about Empire, and so I didn't get the omnibus. This was around the time Marvel stopped doing OHCs as well, so I got it in trade paperback, and I guess it is what it is. X of Swords, and then we get into the Wolverine run, which I have not read. I don't think I've read any of this beyond House of X, Powers of X. I've not read any of this. So the Wolverine stuff, which hopefully gets an omnibus soon, because I have Volume 1, Volume 2, and I forgot to get Volume 3. Hellfire Gala, the X Lives, 10 Lives of Wolverine, the 10 Deaths of Wolverine, the Inferno event, Venom, which has the Venom issues, and then the, I don't remember what that event was called. Someone in the comments, let me know. Something about Black, the guy in black, whatever. Then we get Sins of Sinister, Judgment Day. Again, I've not read any of this. Daredevil by Chip Zdarsky. I'm a big Daredevil fan, but I just kind of blind purchased this based on other people's feelings. Wolverine Sabretooth War just came out. I bought this while I was traveling. Trade paperback, and I've not read it yet, but it's the Straczynski run, and I think he only did like 12 issues before, I think Zdarsky is writing it now. But I was really excited when they announced that J. Michael Straczynski was going to do Captain America, because I love Captain America and I love J. Michael Straczynski. But that was short run. Blood Hunt. So they're doing OHCs again, I guess. Fall of the House of X, and then I've got on pre-order, and it's probably going to get delivered this week. I didn't go Ewing. I didn't go Gillen. I went with the Duggan stuff, because from what I'm told, the Duggan stuff kind of picks up where Hickman left off. And I'll just kind of read like the main line of X-Men. And if I want to get that other stuff, I'll get it. And then you're probably asking yourself, Kev, why the hell's Animal Man there? I don't have anywhere else to put it right now. I need to reorganize my shelves. But that's where my Marvel stuff stops. And let's take a look at some indie stuff. All right, so I love this shelf. And I can't show it to you, but I've got some of these, they're like magazine or comic holders. And I have them just as spacers because it's kind of hard. There's a little overlap on the shelf. So sometimes it's hard to get books out of there. But this is my Brian K. Vaughan section. I've got Ex Machina. I would have upgraded to the omnibus just to save a little space, but I've heard really terrible things about the binding. I love this story. Ex Machina is awesome. Y the Last Man. I'm gonna cry here. I absolutely love Y the Last Man. It's my favorite story of all time. Brian K. Vaughan's my favorite writer of all time. This is fantastic storytelling, and I need to reread this and do a review of it. But another one where it's 60 issues, I think, Y the Last Man is. Plus, there's probably some bonus content in there, but they threw it all in one omnibus, and it's thick, and like too thick. So I decided I'm going to skip that, and I'm going to stay with my OHCs. They're still in pretty good shape. Then we get into Saga. Now, Saga, I know people have some feelings on because of significant delays. But I'm kind of a binger in my old age. So a buddy of mine loaned me book 1, and I fell in love with it. And not shocking, because I love Brian K. Vaughan. But I was like, okay, I'll buy book 2 and 3, and I'm just gonna wait until they finish so I can binge this. Book 4 is coming out here, I think, in like April of 26. So I'm really excited about that. We Stand on Guard. Loved this story. This is actually my first review I did on YouTube. So if you want to see a really anxious me, go watch that weird video. I love this story. I wish it was longer. That could have been a long running series for him, but it's pretty short, like 4 or 5 issues. Paper Girls, I just finally read and did a review on. I absolutely loved that story. It was so good. Page turner. I read it in 3 or 4 days. Could not put it down. The show was canceled, unfortunately, because I'm watching it right now. I'm on episode 6. It's a really fun show. But I think Brian K. Vaughan's just kind of cursed in adaptations. Y Last Man show. I remember back in 2012 or 2013 when they're like, Fox announced, hey, we've got the rights to Y the Last Man. And I was so excited. And then the show came out and bombed and got canceled. But what are you going to do? Spectators by Brian K. Vaughan. This is pretty freaking new, and I just reviewed this. I got this Stan Lee. This is a This was a gift from a friend of mine. I've not read it yet. I think it's just a biography of Stan Lee, but I put it there because it fits kind of good. Hickman, East of West. I can't believe they won't reprint these because people would gobble them up. This is a fantastic story. I love East of West, but it's not my favorite Hickman. My favorite Hickman is the Manhattan Projects, and I got the deluxe hardcovers here. And I think there's more to this. I think he started a follow up and hadn't finished. And I hope he comes back to it and we get a book 3. But this is absolutely crazy. The art by, I think it's Nick Pitara, is perfect. And then I've got Department of Truth by, who's that by? Tinian, I think. I've not read any of his stuff. I'm not a big horror guy, but something about the art in that book and the premise really kind of got me going. So I picked it up. Haven't read it yet. We're gonna go down and then we'll go backwards, just because that's the way I have my shelves set up currently. But let's go down and take a look at some more indies. All right, so this is my I guess I'll call this my Vertigo shelf. This is weird because like Why the Last Man's a Vertigo book, but I don't have it down here because I have it with my Brian K. Vaughan stuff. I don't know. You can't win. Let me know in the comments what you would do. Scalped. I slept on Scalped for many, many years. People would recommend it, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know about Jason Aaron. I don't know about this premise. It doesn't really. So finally, Sal, the Godfather, the CEO of Omnibuses Cafe, said, Kevin, this is one of my favorite stories of all time. I would never ever sell this. You have to read it. And I was like, all right, I'll listen to you. So I bought it in the OHC format, and I loved it. It was my best read of 2025. Blew me away. Just so well written. The art is perfect. The pace of the story. I can't believe this hasn't had a successful TV show, but it is what it is. 100 Bullets. So I owned I had this story. There was 5 deluxes, and there was oversized hardcover deluxe, and there was a trade paperback deluxe. And I got it. It was like I had 3 hardcovers and 2 paperbacks, or vice versa, and I just couldn't find all the hardcovers. And I love the story, but I sold it because I just didn't like the way it looked on the shelf. Because again, I'm crazy, like a lot of you probably are. So I repurchased it recently in these omnibuses that recently came out. This one's way too big, guys. This one is so freaking huge. Look at this thing. Like, I'm gonna try to find the OHCs and swap them out. But I love this story. I need to give this a reread. Sweet Tooth, Vertigo, Jeff Lemire. I've never read this. I really enjoyed the TV show, but I picked this up on a deal in the cafe. And then the return of Sweet Tooth. I don't know anything about that outside of the TV show. DMZ, oversized hardcovers. There was no omnibus. I think they did a compendium. But I love DMZ. DMZ is such a cool story. I another book that I reread in 25 and reviewed. So if you want to go find that, maybe I'll throw a little image of it right there. And then we get into more Brian Wood, and it's not Vertigo. This is Dark Horse, but it's The Massive. And The Massive is beautiful. Let me see if I can pull this out with my one hand because I'm holding this dumb microphone. It's kind of tight. So it's massive, right? It's like a library size. But this is Brian Wood, and who did the art? Gary Brown. This story is so good. I wish more people would read this. There's trade paperbacks and then these hardcovers. I'm going to set it down here because, hey, there's my face. One-handed, I won't be able to get back in there. The Massive is so good. I need to reread it and review it. V for Vendetta, I've never read it, but I just picked up the 30th anniversary OHC. And then we go to Watchmen, where is the exact opposite. I've probably read it 15 times. I read it every year to every 2 years, and I own it in 2 formats because you're not a fan if you don't own it in 2 formats. In fact, I'll probably get the absolute of that. Let's finish out indies, and then I'll show you my very tiny DC collection. All right, so the rest of my indies, this is the Ed Brubaker shelf, and I don't own everything Ed Brubaker that I like. There's more stuff that I want to get, but I've got all of the Reckless stuff. I haven't read it yet. I think this would be a great travel book because they're tiny. Kill or Be Killed is amazing. Needs a reprint. Velvet. I absolutely love Velvet. When people talk Brubaker, they rarely mention Velvet. And it's one of the few books that he has not done with, or it's one of, how do I say that? It's one of the few books he didn't do with Sean Phillips. He did this with his Captain America partner, Steve Epting. Velvet's a really fun read. Criminal, I actually read twice in 2025. That's how good it is. And then there's a couple follow-ups. The Knives, which just came out, and then Cruel Summer, which is an older follow-up, but I haven't read those follow-ups yet. And then I got the Sleeper Omnibus. But there's Incognito. I don't. They're escaping me now. But there's a bunch of other Brubaker stuff that I want to get. And then just because I don't know where else to put them, I recently got Road to Perdition and A History of Violence, Vertigo titles that I love the movies of, and I've never read the comics, and I want to check them out. These are black and white books. Let's see if I can show you some while holding this mic. Really excited to read those. Probably be also good travel books. Let's check out DC, which is just Batman. Hint, hint. All right, here is my DC collection, and it is just Batman. So to explain, growing up, I read a lot of Marvel, and I was not exposed to a lot of DC. I think probably my earliest comic books were, my dad had the trade paperback of, what was that book by Frank Miller, The Dark Knight Returns. And I read the crap out of that one. And then he also had the trade paperback of The Death of Superman. And I was like, this is really cool. Superman's dead. So I read that a lot. But, then I got pretty heavily into Marvel, and I just never read a lot of DC. But I've always loved Batman. So we start off with Year One, which has an absolute. I think there's an OHC, but I'm kind of holding out that it'd be in an omnibus someday. And then for some reason, sandwiched back here where you can't see it is The Man Who Laughs by Brubaker, and it's kind of an origin story for Joker. And then all-time great book, I think everyone should have this, is Batman by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. It's got Long Halloween, and then the follow-up to that, and then Catwoman in Rome. All right, and a quick editing fix for some barking dogs, not darking bogs. So then we get into Killing Joke by Alan Moore, Brian Boland. That's amazing. Death in the Family, oversized hardcover deluxe edition. And then I should show you some of these. This is Nightfall. So people have a love-hate relationship with Nightfall. I feel like Nightfall is kind of like Spider-Man's Clone Saga. Like, people read it and then they hated it, and then nostalgia for some reason kind of brought people back. For a long time, these books didn't get reprints, and these are the original printings. But people have, pretty strong feelings about Nightfall. I love Nightfall. I'm going to show you, and I got the only thing I don't like about Nightfall is the dust jackets, which are disgusting looking. So I'm going to pull one out. I'm going to try to clip this stupid microphone onto my shirt and show you the customs. These are the only customs I've done. But I got custom dust jackets made, and try to get rid of the shiny light. This has that protective broad art thing, so it's very shiny. But I did customs just because I hated the dust jacket look. And that's Joe. I'm a sucker for a Joe Quesada cover. It's very shiny and hard to see, but I need to reread these and do a review of them. But I absolutely love that era. It's just some classic Batman creators, and I'm gonna get my microphone back in my hand. Then we get into Road to No Man's Land and No Man's Land 1 and 2. I haven't read that stuff. That was kind of mid to late 90s. And again, I wasn't collecting Batman. And then after that, Bruce Wayne, Murder and Fugitive. I think a lot of that is Brubaker, which I love. So I'm excited to read that. And then War Games. And then we'll finish off Batman on the shelf to the right. All right, finishing off the Batman of what I own and what is collected. So the Hush, here's another instance where The OHC is more than what you need. The omnibus has a lot of the Dinny stuff, which is right next to it. So I didn't upgrade to the omnibus. I stayed, save the shelf space. Then Batman by Paul Dini. I've read a lot of this, but not all of this. I'm really excited to get back into it. And then the Grant Morrison stuff. And I loved the Grant Morrison Batman. I know another one where people have some strong feelings on. I really enjoyed that stuff. There's the Black Mirror, which happens. This is a Snyder post. It's still, this is all still post crisis stuff. I guess I should have said I don't own anything that isn't post crisis, because to me that's Batman. But it is what it is. But there's a couple OHCs. I think there's some Morrison stuff that wasn't included in these books that I need to get. But that's the Batman collection. Then obviously we're on to the stuff that you already saw. But I've got some stuff down here I'll show you. Maybe just holding the phone. All right. Hopefully I'm not too shaky here. But here's just some other stuff that I've got. So Drumsticks of Doom trade paperback. This is a Kickstarter book by John Westhoff. The Marvel versus DC old school trade paperback. I didn't get the Omni. Never thought it was necessary. Noir stories from Black creators. Buy this book. This book is so good. This is done by Fair Square, I think, is the thing. And then this is, I want to say this is like the pride of my collection. These are the Wizard Entertainment, Wizard Magazine Best of Twisted Toy Fair Theater. I'll never sell these. This should be an omnibus. This is some of the greatest, funniest stuff that I've ever had. And then we've got some novels. I do read regular big boy novels occasionally. And then down here, I've got Panel Bound Comics box just to ship some stuff. This is the box for that die-cast Iron Man I showed you earlier. And then these are the books that I have donated to my son's collection. He's 8 and will not touch them yet, but hopefully soon he will. But that is my shelf tour, and I was really excited to do this. And let me know in the comments what you thought. And hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you later. Thanks, Omnibuds.